Hey, it's Coach Anderson again here with Mississippi Public Broadcasting Online U.S. History from 1877 to present. In Unit 3, what we've been talking about, of course, is immigration. Today, what we're going to talk about is urbanization, which comes as a subsection of that particular unit and lesson. And what we're going to talk about is the growth of American cities. So the period we're going to be talking about, of course, is going to be 1865 to around 1900 or so. Just as we start with every lesson and every unit we do, we try to, of course, introduce what the unit focus questions are. And these are the two questions that we want you to focus on as we go through this particular lesson. Why do people migrate? We talked about a bunch of push and pull factors, of course, that indicated that. And then how is urban life different from rural life? Today, what we're going to do is jump a little bit, of course, into urban life so that you can see some of the things, of course, that the immigrants and the native people that are already here, Native Americans, I say Native Americans, the American citizens that were already here in these cities, how they lived and some of the difficulties that they faced. We're going to start with our Do Now activity. Take out your journals, if you will, and write down what the journal topic states. And what it states today is what might be the problems and benefits that you might get when living in large cities. So think about your own situation. If you lived in a large city, what would be some of the things that you would think would be some of the good things or the benefits, and then what would be maybe some of the negative things that are not so good from living in American cities. So we'll give you a few moments. We'll let you formulate an answer, and then we'll come back and give you some ideas about some of the things that maybe you should have considered. Okay, you should have had enough time that you were able, of course, to go through and write down a few things in terms of what your thoughts are regarding living in American cities. So what might be some of the problems that you might have to face if you live in a large city? What about overpopulation, overcrowding? Some people like their space. In a lot of cities, of course, because there were so many people that lived there, they virtually lived on top of each other. In addition to that, one of the problems that might have been in terms of looking at violence, disease. If somebody got sick, maybe everybody got sick. So when you're looking at it today, those are some of the things that were just as true yesterday back in the 1800s as they are today. Overcrowding is a problem. Disease could be a problem. It's a little bit less in terms of looking at disease today because with the advances that we made in medicine, but yet and still. We all, of course, went through COVID a few years back, and in terms of looking at going through COVID, of course, one of the things that was kind of problematic was how close, of course, that we were in terms of proximity to each other, in terms of our initial, how close we were, in proximity to being with each other, but even in living in close proximity to each other. So those are some of the things that could be problems. Well, what could be some of the benefits? Well, recreation, things to do, convenience. So when you look at some of the benefits of living in cities, it's a lot easier to get access to health care in the cities than it probably would be if you lived out in the sticks or in the boonies or in the country. So in looking at it, there are some benefits, of course, and there's some problems from both sides. What we'll do is we'll move on. We'll talk about the vocabulary. Once again, what we've tried to do and what we will continue to do is point out some of the vocabulary as we go through. If by chance there's something that we miss, you, of course, have the option, of course, of writing these things down, things that you don't know, and looking them up. Academic vocabulary is incentive, trigger, amenities. Content vocabulary will be skyscraper, the tenement, the political machine, the party bought, and grabbed. So we'll move on today, and we'll try to give you some ideas about what it was like living in American cities in the 1800s and the turn of the 20th century. Guided reading questions. There are 3 guided reading questions that will guide our lesson today. How was life in the big cities different from life on the farms and in small towns? How did living conditions of urban working class differ from those of other social classes? And what types of problems developed due to the rapid growth of urban areas? So those are the 3 questions as we go through lesson 2 on urbanization that we want you to be kind of cognizant of. We're going to move ahead and look at Americans migrating to the cities. And one of the things that we want to tell you is looking at some of the things, of course, we're talking about amenities. Amenities, of course, were those things that are those extras, those nice little pleasant things that you get because of moving in this case. Cities after the Civil War grew because of amenities like electricity, running water, modern plumbing, museums, libraries, theaters, And they offered incentives in some cases, or economic opportunities with factories, in factories to work at a steady rate of pay. It was a little bit different, of course, than living on the farm. And the farm, of course, you were at the benefit, of course, you were at the you were at the, I'm trying to think of a word here. You were kind of in a situation where you depended on the crops, and if the crop failed, you were put yourself in a position where, of course, you have to struggle or go into debt. And because of the struggles, of course, on the American farms, you have to also understand after the Civil War, Americans start to turn away from farming because of some issues, of course, with crop prices, and that's going to become a lingering problem for the American farmer throughout the 1800s, the late 1800s. Cities and the issues they created. And by 1900, there were 1,700 American cities with population over 2,500 people. And there were 131 with those numbers in 1840. So we're going to find that more and more cities, of course, are going to be created. And then when you look at cities like Chicago and New York City, they're going to have populations that are in excess of 2 million people by 1900. To offset the congestion and lack of space, skyscrapers were created so cities could build up instead of out, because the land, of course, the space, of course, was so limited. Streetcars, elevated railways, and subways were created to aid traffic because of all the congestion there. Henry Bessemer is one of the people responsible for the creation of these skyscrapers. His innovation in steel production by using something called the Bessemer process will allow us to build up and build these huge skyscrapers in places like New York City, of course, and Chicago. Elisha Graves Otis, even with the skyscraper, there has to be a means, of course, of getting up those many flights of stairs or use of an elevator. And Elisha Graves Otis comes up with something called the elevator safety brake. So what he basically does is it allows lifts or elevators, of course, to be created that become safe for people to, of course, to go up 8, 9, 10, 12, 15 floors in some of these skyscrapers.